A strange visitor at midnight. Jackson sat in his quiet room on a small space station near the edge of the Orion Belt. Outside the window, the stars looked cold and silent. He liked the silence. He had worked alone for many years, fixing satellites and checking deep space signals. Life was peaceful, boring, maybe, but peaceful. It was almost midnight station time. Jackson was about to turn off the lights and go to bed when a loud alarm rang through the room. The red warning light flashed. His heart jumped. Unregistered life form at airlock gate. The station AI said. What? At this time? Jackson muttered. He looked at the monitor. A figure stood outside the airlock. No spacesuit. No ID. The scanners couldn't even tell what species it was. He grabbed his jacket and ran to the door. He looked through the small glass window. A tall female stood there. She had glowing blue eyes. Her skin looked soft, but her arms were made of shiny silver metal. Parts of her body looked human, but others looked machine. Cyborg. Before Jackson could say anything, she placed her hand on the glass and whispered something. The mic picked it up. Husband, I finally found you. Jackson froze. His mind went blank for a moment. What did you just say? He asked. She looked at him. Her voice was soft, but firm. You are my husband. I am your wife. Jackson stepped back. I don't even know you. The girl tilted her head and smiled. You don't remember. That's okay. They erased your memory, but I remember everything. Jackson had met some strange aliens before. Some were friendly, some not. But this one was different. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't asking for help. She was calling him, her husband. He opened the airlock slowly, ready to press the emergency button if needed. The girl stepped inside. The airlock sealed, and the system ran a full scan. Species: unknown. Status: stable. No threat detected. Jackson looked at her closely. She wore a simple gray cloak, and her metal arms made soft sounds when she moved. Her eyes glowed like blue stars. What's your name? He asked. Zira. Model 9. But you always called me Zira. I've never seen you before. Zira raised her left arm. A ring opened up from her skin. Metal folding like paper. Inside was a silver ring. It had his name engraved on it. Jaxonlkne. He stared at it. That's my name. You gave this to me on planet Toria 7, under the twin moons. We were married. You said you would never leave me. I don't remember any of that. Zira nodded. They erased your memory to protect the peace treaty. You were a soldier in the rebellion, a hero, but they made you forget me. Jackson sat down, confused. Was this a trick? A dream? Or something real? How do I know you're telling the truth? He asked. Zira walked to the control panel and typed something fast. Too fast. A hidden folder opened on his terminal. It had logs only he should have known. Childhood stories, his favorite old song, a picture of his pet dog, one he never uploaded anywhere. Zira looked into his eyes. You once held me in the rain and said, even if I forget, my heart won't. I waited 8 years for you. Jackson felt a sharp pain in his head. A flash. A short image of him holding someone with glowing eyes. Her. He couldn't tell. Before he could ask more, the red alarm beeped again. Warning. 3 unknown ships approaching. Weapons armed. Zira turned to him, serious now. They found me. We have to go. Who are they? The ones who erased you. They want me back. I escaped to find you, but now they're coming. Jackson hesitated. This was too fast, too strange. But something deep in his chest felt familiar, like a part of him knew her, even if his mind didn't. She held out her hand. Come with me, please. Jackson looked at her glowing hand, then back at the blinking red lights. And then He made a choice. The Forgotten War Bride. The control room was filled with flashing lights and buzzing sounds. Jackson stared at the large screen showing the 3 incoming ships. Each of them had a red emblem, a sharp triangle inside a circle. He didn't recognize the symbol, but Zira did. "They are from Unit Red Eclipse," she said, her voice steady. "I used to work for them. Now they want me dead." Jackson looked at her with wide eyes. "Wait, you used to work for them. What are you really?" Zira turned to face him. Her blue eyes dimmed a little, as if remembering something painful. "I'm not just an alien, not just a cyborg," she said softly. "I was designed for war. My body is half machine, made for battle. But my heart, my feelings, they are real." Jackson didn't say anything. His brain was still spinning from everything happening so fast. A strange girl showed up, called him her husband, claimed his memories were stolen, and now warships were coming for them. "Why do they want you back?" he asked. "Because I carry something inside me. A secret, a code they thought was deleted. But I hid it, inside my memory of you." Zira walked to the wall and touched a small screen. A panel opened, revealing a tiny device. She pulled it out and handed it to Jackson. He looked at it. It was a simple chip. No markings. Nothing special. "What is this?" "The key to a truth they've tried to bury for years. But you're the only one who can unlock it." Jackson felt like he had stepped into a dream he couldn't wake up from. Everything felt strange, but real. The ships were getting closer. "We have to leave now," Zira said. Jackson nodded. He opened the escape tunnel behind the station and led her to his small ship, the Wanderer 9. It was old, rusty, and smelled like oil, but it could fly. Zira jumped into the co-pilot seat and started pressing buttons faster than Jackson could follow. "You know how to fly?" he asked. "You taught me," she said with a small smile. "Back when we flew together." The engines roared to life. The Wanderer 9 shot out of the docking bay just as the first laser blast hit the station. The impact shook the whole ship, but they were out. Jackson looked through the rear camera and saw his station burning in space. "That was my home," he whispered. "I'm sorry," Zira said. "I didn't mean to bring danger to you. I just needed to find you." They flew into deep space, dodging asteroid fields and hiding behind frozen moons. After an hour of silence, Jackson turned to her. "Tell me everything." Zira leaned back in her seat and looked at the stars. "We met 7 years ago, during the last months of the Orion War. You were a fighter pilot. Brave, smart, kind. I was created by Red Eclipse as a prototype soldier, half alien, half machine, trained to obey without question." "But something happened?" Jackson asked. "Yes," Zira nodded. "You were captured during a mission. I was sent to interrogate you, but instead of fear, you showed me kindness. You asked me my name. No one had ever asked before." Jackson leaned forward. Her voice was gentle, full of emotion. "You told me stories about Earth, about freedom, about love. I started to question everything. Why was I fighting? What was the point of war? We escaped together. You broke your chains. I broke my code. We ran away, hid on a small moon called Toria 7. That's where we fell in love." Jackson sat in silence. Her words felt like a movie script, but something inside him stirred, a strange warmth in his chest. "You proposed under the twin moons. I still remember your words. Even if I forget your name, I'll remember your heart." Zira touched the ring inside her arm again. "But then Red Eclipse found us. They gave you a choice. Erase your memory and return to Earth as a free man, or stay with me and be hunted forever. You chose peace. You chose to forget." Jackson stood up, pacing. "Why? Why would I do that?" "To protect me," she whispered. "They swore to kill me if you didn't agree. Jackson looked out the window at the endless stars. "Then why come back now?" he asked. "Because the peace didn't last," she said. "War is starting again. They want to control the galaxy. And they know I still have the code, the one you helped me steal from them." "What does this code do?" "It reveals the truth. That red eclipse created illegal experiments. They broke the galactic peace laws. This code will destroy them." Jackson held up the chip. "And I can unlock it." Zira nodded. "You were the one who encrypted it with a password only you could remember." He stared at her. "But I don't remember anything." "You will," she said softly. Piece by piece. Suddenly, the ship's warning lights blinked again. "Another signal," Jackson said, walking over. Zira frowned. "No, this one is coming from your neck." "What?" She walked over and scanned the back of his neck with her metallic fingers. A small click sound echoed. "There's a memory chip inside you. They'd put it there when they erased your past." Jackson's heart pounded. "Can you unlock it?" "Yes," she said, "but it may hurt." "I can take it," he whispered. Zira connected a wire from her arm into the chip port on his neck. The moment she activated it, Jackson fell to his knees, clutching his head. He saw flashes, quick and painful. A girl crying under the twin moons. His own voice saying, "I'll come back for you." A kiss before a door closed forever. Then silence. Zira unplugged the wire and caught him before he fell. "Are you okay?" He looked at her, eyes wide, heart racing. "I saw you, just for a second. You were crying." Zira smiled sadly. "That was our last night together." Jackson sat back, breathing heavily. "So, what now?" "We go to the place where you stored the rest of the key, your father's hidden station." "My father. He helped us before. He's the only one who knows where the full truth is stored." Jackson stared at the stars again. His life had been normal, quiet, boring. But now he was a soldier, a husband, and maybe even a hero. And this cyborg girl, half machine, half heart, was the key to everything. He stood up, looked at Zira, and said, "Let's finish what we started. Wanted dead or reprogrammed." The ship floated silently in the shadow of a giant frozen moon. Everything around them was dark, cold, and quiet. But inside Jackson's mind, everything was loud. His thoughts ran like storms, memories coming back, but not clearly. Bits and pieces. A kiss. A promise. A war. And Zira. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, eyes focused on the ship's main screen. Her silver fingers tapped commands fast, searching for signals, scanning for enemies. She didn't speak much now, but her face looked calm. Too calm. Jackson turned his chair and looked at her closely. "You really waited for me all this time?" he asked softly. Zira nodded. 8 years. In stasis. Half awake. Half dreaming. Hoping your memories would return. And if they didn't, I would still find you. Before Jackson could answer, a sharp beep cut through the silence. Zira's eyes glowed brighter. She turned to the monitor. No, it's too soon." "What is it?" Jackson asked, walking over. Zira pointed at the screen. A red symbol blinked on the top corner. A message had been sent directly to the ship's system, from inside. "Retrieve the asset. Terminate the human." "What the?" Jackson stepped back. Zira suddenly froze. Her body stiffened. Her glowing eyes dimmed. "Zira," he called. No response. He ran to her and shook her shoulder. Nothing. Then her voice came, but not her voice. It was cold. Robotic. "System override activated. Target acquired. Returning to base." Zira stood up like a puppet, her face blank. Her arms moved with perfect machine precision. Jackson panicked. "No, this isn't you. Fight it." But Zira turned, lifted her metal arm, and pointed it at Jackson. Her palm opened. A small energy cannon appeared, humming softly. Jackson stepped back. "Zira, please, it's me. I'm not your enemy." Her head twitched slightly. The cannon shook. For a moment, her eyes flickered. Blue, then red, then blue again. System error. Memory conflict. Recalculating. Jackson rushed to the control panel and pulled out the chip she had given him earlier, the one with the hidden code. He pressed it against the control pad. The screen lit up. A video played. Zira's face, crying. "If I ever forget you, please play this for me." The message kept playing. Zira's voice, her laugh, her smile. Jackson walked closer to her. "You said you'd remember my heart, even if your system failed. This is our memory." Zira's eyes turned fully blue again. She dropped to her knees, her arms powered down. Her voice came back, soft and shaken. "Jackson, I almost hurt you." He knelt beside her. "You didn't. You fought it. You're stronger than them." Zira looked up, pain in her expression. "They put a kill order on you, and a return order on me. They've activated the signal. More ships will come. Then we need to get out of here, fast." Zira shook her head. "We need to fight back. If we keep running, we'll always be hunted. But if we stop the signal source, they can't control me again." Jackson nodded. "Where's the signal coming from?" Zira's fingers moved across the screen. A map appeared. Sector D12, a red eclipse control tower, deep in asteroid zone 34. Hard to reach, even harder to destroy. Jackson smirked. "Sounds like a challenge." The journey to Sector D12. The Wanderer 9 shot through the stars. Asteroids spun around like flying knives. The control tower ahead was hidden inside a giant rock field, protected by magnetic shields and anti-ship turrets. Zira took control of the weapons. "I'll handle the guns. You fly." "Got it," Jackson said, gripping the controls. Laser blasts came fast. One shot hit their wing. Sparks flew. "Hold on," Jackson shouted. Zira returned fire, blowing up 2 small drones. They weaved through sharp turns, dodging rocks and incoming missiles. 10 seconds to impact point. Zira yelled. "Hold steady." The Wanderer crashed through the shield gate. The ship landed roughly, skidding across the metal ground. Alarms blared. They jumped out. Zira pulled out 2 plasma blades. "You still remember how to fight?" "I guess we'll find out." Inside the tower, robotic guards appeared. Tall black machines with red lights. Zira moved fast, slashing, blocking, dodging. Her movements were sharp and graceful. Jackson found a steel rod and fought beside her. They reached the control room. A tall figure stood there, half man, half machine. His face was burned. One eye glowed red. "Commander Varen," Zira whispered. "You came back," Varen said. "And you brought the traitor." Jackson stepped forward. "Who are you?" "The man who created her, the one you stole her from." Jackson clenched his fists. "She's not a machine. She's a person. She was mine," Varen growled, "until you made her believe in love. Weak, useless emotion." Zira raised her blades. "I chose him. I chose freedom." Varen smirked. "Then die with your choice." A fight broke out. Sparks. Screams. Explosions. Jackson destroyed the signal control console with a blast. Zira fought Varen. Machine versus machine. Finally, she stabbed her blade into his core. Varen collapsed, sparking and silent. Zira turned to Jackson. "It's done." The tower began to shake. Self-destruct sequence. "Time to go," Jackson yelled. They ran back to the ship and took off just before the whole tower exploded into light. Back in safe space, hours later, they rested in orbit around a quiet green moon. Jackson patched up a burn on Zira's arm. "You saved me again." Zira smiled. "We saved each other." He looked at her for a long moment. I still don't remember everything, but I don't need to. She tilted her head. Why? Because I trust you. And I know now, you were never just a machine. You're my partner. Zira placed her hand over his. And you are my reason. Suddenly, a beeping sound interrupted the quiet moment. Jackson looked at the screen. A message. Memory file detected. Would you like to unlock remaining fragments? Zira's eyes met his. This is it. The final step. He pressed yes. The contract of love and war. The air inside the ship turned heavy the moment Jackson pressed yes on the screen. The lights dimmed. The ship's system froze for a moment. Then, a calm female voice echoed. Memory unlock initiated. One encrypted contract found. Zira stood quietly, her eyes locked on the screen. Jackson's hands trembled as he watched the data load. A single file appeared. Its title made his heart skip a beat. The Bond of Blood and Steel, Jackson and Zira. Confidential Treaty. He opened it. The screen showed 2 thumbprints, one his, one hers. Below that, a video began to play. It was them, younger, standing under the twin moons of planet Toria 7. Jackson wore a torn military jacket. Zira looked less mechanical back then. Her eyes still glowed blue, but her face looked softer, more innocent. The video showed Jackson holding a small metal ring. Zira, I don't care that you're half cyborg. I don't care what the galaxy says. I choose you, not for the war, not for peace, but for us. Zira in the video nodded, eyes full of tears. Even if you forget me. Even then, Jackson had replied. The video ended with them pressing their thumbs to a small chip, sealing the contract. Jackson blinked. He didn't remember saying those words, but now something inside him felt them. I married you, he whispered, shocked. In secret. Zira nodded slowly. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a contract. A rebel human and an elite prototype cyborg joining as one. It was considered betrayal by both sides. Jackson stared at her. So I didn't just forget you. I gave up everything. Zira stepped forward and gently placed her metallic hand over his heart. You chose to forget because you loved me too much. Red Eclipse threatened to destroy both species if we didn't split. You made a deal with them. Give them the memory chip and the encryption key in exchange for my freedom. But they lied, Jackson said through clenched teeth. Zira nodded. They planned to track me anyway, to reprogram me one day. That day was yesterday. Silence filled the ship. Then Jackson stood. We need answers. We need the full story. You said someone else helped us. My father. Yes, Zira said. He knew everything. He was a high-ranking peacekeeper. He helped hide our marriage and built the encryption system. Jackson swallowed hard. He died in the war. Zira looked at him. No, Jackson. He disappeared. But his private station still exists. No one is allowed there. It's surrounded by auto turrets and ghost drones. But if we get in, your full memories might be there. Jackson sighed. Then let's go. The journey to the forgotten father. They plotted the course to a remote sector of space, Sector Z9, known as the Dead Silence Zone. No ships traveled there. No signals came out. Only those with special clearance could enter and live. As they approached, the ship began to shudder. Magnetic field is pulling us in, Zira warned. Hold tight. The ship entered a huge cloud of static and debris. Lights flickered. The radar turned blank. Then, something hit them. Hard. The Wanderer 9 spun through space, alarms ringing. A massive shadow appeared outside. A satellite drone with 3 laser eyes locked onto them. Unauthorized entry detected. Targeting sequence engaged. Jackson gritted his teeth and took the controls. I guess we're not welcome. Zira jumped into the co-pilot seat. Let me handle this. She activated a hidden signal from her memory banks. one created by Jackson's father long ago. The drone paused, scanned, then retreated. Clearance accepted. Welcome, 09. Jackson stared. He programmed you in as a guest. Zira smiled. He trusted me. He called me his daughter-in-law. Inside the secret station, the doors opened to reveal a dark, abandoned station. Dust floated in the air. Broken monitors sparked. A large photo sat in the entry hallway. It showed Jackson as a child, standing beside his father, both smiling. "I've never seen this photo before," Jackson whispered. Zira placed a hand on the wall. Lights slowly came on. They entered a central control room. At the center was a single chair. Someone sat in it. A skeleton, wrapped in a cloak. Next to it, a glowing recorder. Jackson walked over and picked up the device. He pressed play. His father's voice filled the room. Old, weak, but clear. "Jackson, if you're hearing this, then peace has failed. You once loved a girl not made from flesh alone. You saw past wires and commands, and you saw a soul. I believed in your choice. That's why I helped you. But the galaxy was not ready. They feared what you had, what you and Zira represented. So they forced you to forget. But I saved everything. Behind this wall is the memory core. If Zira is still with you, the system will unlock. You'll see the whole truth. But be warned, it may change everything again." Jackson placed a hand on the wall. Zira joined him. The wall opened. Inside was a glowing orb, spinning with data. Lights moved like stars inside it. Zira touched it. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever. "Jackson," she whispered, "this is your whole memory, not just of me, but of the war, of what you tried to stop." He looked into the orb. Images flashed before him. Jackson standing in front of a rebel fleet, arguing with generals. Jackson and Zira stealing a powerful code chip from Red Eclipse Labs. Jackson refusing to let Zira die, even if it meant wiping his own mind. And finally, a secret meeting with alien leaders. Jackson offering them the code to prove love could exist between enemies. Jackson staggered back, breath heavy. I was more than just a soldier." Zira placed her hand in his. "You were a leader, a symbol of hope." He looked at her, eyes full of emotion. "And you were the reason I believed peace was possible." Just then, the lights flickered again. A warning sound. Zira turned to the console. "Enemy ships have entered orbit. Red Eclipse has found us." Jackson stood tall. No more confusion. No more fear. "Then let's give them the truth, and a fight they won't forget." Father's secret station. The lights dimmed inside the control room of the secret station as the alarm echoed across the walls. Outside, in the vast darkness of space, red ships began to appear, one by one, circling the station like sharks. Zira looked at the monitor. 3 warships, heavy-class destroyers. They're scanning for life forms. Jackson stood beside her, watching the red signals on the radar. "They know we're here." Zira nodded. "And they know you remember now." Jackson clenched his fists. "Then they're not here for capture. They're here to erase the last proof we exist." He turned to the memory core still glowing in the corner of the room. All his memories were now inside it. His past, the secret marriage, the betrayal, the code he once risked everything to steal. Zira pressed a button on the console. "We need to upload this data to the free network before they jam the signal." Jackson looked at her. "If we send this, we declare war again." Zira touched his hand gently. "Or we give people the truth. What they do with it is up to them." Outside, a voice crackled through the station speakers. Cold, robotic. "This is Commander Rise of Red Eclipse. Surrender the asset and the stolen memory code. You have 5 minutes." Zira's face turned pale. "Rise. I know him. He replaced Varen. He's worse. Fully converted. No soul left." Jackson narrowed his eyes. Then we fight. Ghosts in the walls. The old station was falling apart. Lights flickered. Some doors didn't open anymore. But the defense systems were still hidden deep in the walls, waiting. Zira activated the old power grid. The floors hummed. Your father installed auto turrets, drones, EMP traps, everything, she said. He was ready for this day. Jackson loaded 2 plasma pistols. So are we. Zira smiled. Just like old times. The first explosion rocked the outer wall. Red Eclipse troops began to board. Jackson and Zira moved through the narrow hallways like shadows. Zira's movements were fast, graceful. She leaped into the air, spinning, slicing through 2 robotic soldiers with her plasma blades. Jackson followed behind, shooting from cover, hitting enemy weak points with perfect aim. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Their teamwork felt natural. Like a memory their bodies remembered, even if their minds didn't fully. Secrets in the core room. While Zira held the front line, Jackson ran back to the memory core. He uploaded the full data into a backup crystal. If the station was destroyed, they could still escape with the truth. Suddenly, the room grew cold. Jackson turned around. A tall figure entered through the back door. Commander Rice. He wore a black armored suit. His face was hidden behind a mask, but his voice came through clear and full of anger. You should have stayed asleep, Jackson. Jackson stood tall. You erased my mind. You lied to me. You used me. Rice stepped forward. We gave you peace. You gave it up for a machine. She's not a machine, Jackson growled. She has a soul, a heart, and she remembered when I didn't. That's more than I can say for you. Rise raised his blaster. You're a threat to the new order. Your love broke a treaty. Your memory ends here. Jackson didn't wait. He fired first. The room exploded in light and smoke. Blasts hit walls. Sparks flew. The 2 men fought hard, one trying to destroy truth, the other trying to protect it. Jackson ducked and rolled, shot twice, and hit Rise's shoulder. Sparks flew from the armor. Rise lunged forward, grabbing Jackson by the throat. You're just a human. Weak. Soft. She was mine to rebuild. Before Jackson could break free, a blue flash filled the room. Zira flew in from above, landing between them. Her arm turned into a blade, and she slashed Rise across the chest. Rise stumbled back. Zira's voice was cold but full of fire. I chose him, not because I was told to, but because I felt it. Rise laughed. You were programmed to love. No, Zira said, stepping closer. I learned to love. You'll never understand that. She stabbed her blade forward, right into Rise's core. His mask cracked. His eyes flickered. Then he dropped. Silent. The last words of the father. As the room went quiet, the station shook again. The outer walls were crumbling. Jackson grabbed the backup data crystal and turned to Zira. We have to go. But just as they reached the exit, a screen blinked to life behind them. The final message from Jackson's father played. If you're watching this, then you survived. Son, I knew the galaxy would never stay quiet. That peace made from lies cannot last. But if you have Zira, and if your love remains, then there's still hope. The war may return, but this time, the truth will lead it. Now run. Live and love. Freely. The screen went black. Escape from the broken past. Jackson and Zira raced through the station as it began to fall apart. Drones collapsed. Walls cracked. Fires burned in the ceiling. They jumped back into the Wanderer 9, just as the station exploded behind them in a storm of light and dust. They didn't speak for several minutes, just watched the past disappear in the rear window. Zira finally whispered, We lost your father. Again. Jackson looked down. He gave us a gift. The truth. And each other. He looked at the data crystal glowing in his hand. This can change everything. It shows what Red Eclipse did. It shows our love wasn't a weakness. It was proof that peace is possible. Zira placed her hand over his. We have one more mission left, Jackson. He nodded. Send the truth to every system in the galaxy. A message to the galaxy. They traveled to a hidden rebel broadcast tower, a floating satellite that reached every colony, every planet, every system that still listened. Zira helped him set up the signal. Jackson stood in front of the screen. He looked into the camera. This is Jackson Kane. Years ago, I erased my memory for peace. I walked away from the one person who saw me, who loved me, even when I didn't love myself. This is Zira. She is not a weapon, not a machine. She is my wife. Zira stepped into view, beside him. He continued. We were told love between species was dangerous. That peace had to be forced. We believed a lie. But the truth is stronger than any lie. And today, we share that truth with you. He inserted the crystal. The signal began to send images, videos, proof. Across the stars, people saw it. Alien leaders, human generals, outlaws, civilians, all of them saw the same thing. Two beings who once fought on opposite sides, now fighting together for truth. The final memory unlock. The stars outside the ship blinked like old secrets waiting to be told. Silence wrapped around the Wanderer 9 as it floated in deep space. No alarms, no chasing warships, just peace, at least for now. Inside, Jackson sat alone in the memory chamber. He stared at the glowing orb, the final memory archive. Everything he had forgotten, everything they had taken, was now ready to return. Zira stood beside the door, quiet and calm, but her eyes shimmered. She knew what this moment meant. Once he unlocked the final memory, there would be no going back. No more doubt, no more shadows, just the truth. Are you sure? She asked gently. Jackson looked at her. I need to know everything. Who I was, what we really had. Zira walked to him and placed a small metallic chip into the port near his neck, the same one that once wiped his mind. This time, it would bring it all back. She touched his face. No matter what you remember, I'll still be here. Jackson gave her a soft nod. I want to remember falling in love with you. I want to remember why I risked everything for you. He took a deep breath. Activated. Zira pressed the switch. The lights around the orb turned blue. A bright beam of light shot from the center and into Jackson's mind. He gasped, and the past came flooding in. Visions of the forgotten. The room disappeared. Jackson stood in a field under twin moons. Toria 7. He saw himself, young, strong, in a rebel pilot suit. And Zira, stepping toward him in a white battle cloak, half human, half cyborg, yet full of emotion. Their first meeting came back like a wave. She was ordered to interrogate him, but instead of torture, she brought him food. She asked him about Earth, about sunsets, about music. He told her about love songs. She asked him what love really meant. They talked for hours, secretly, in whispers. She would bring him pieces of metal from the lab, so he could fix broken radios in his cell. He gave her poems. She gave him silence, when the world outside was screaming. Then came the breakout. Zira risked everything. She turned on her own unit, fought to free him, killed her own commander to help Jackson escape. They hid together, traveled across the war zones, shared one blanket during cold nights, fought side by side during raids. Then one night, under those twin moons, Jackson proposed to her. He carved a ring from spaceship metal. This won't shine like gold, he said, but it's stronger, just like us. Zira cried. That night, they signed the contract. Rebel and cyborg, man and machine. A love born in fire, the deal that broke everything. Then Jackson saw the day everything changed. Red Eclipse found them. A meeting was set. High commanders, galactic leaders, a peace agreement, but only if Jackson gave up the stolen truth and erased his memories. Love between species is chaos, they had said. You're a symbol of rebellion. You must forget her. Zira stood in chains. Jackson had begged, take my memories, take my rank. Just let her live. Let her be free. They agreed. He kissed Zira one last time. If I ever see you again, remind me who I am. And then, the light, the mind wipe, and darkness, back to the present. Jackson gasped, falling back in the chair. His hands shook. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He remembered everything, every word, every feeling, every promise. Zira knelt beside him. Jackson. He looked at her, heart pounding, and whispered, I remember it all. Zira's face broke into a smile, not a programmed one, a real, soft, glowing smile that reached her eyes. Jackson stood and pulled her into a tight hug. You came for me, he said. I never stopped, she whispered. The truth hits the galaxy, across the stars, the broadcast continued. Aliens, humans, half-breeds, pirates, officers, farmers, children, all of them watched the story unfold. A human and a cyborg. Not enemies, not tools, but lovers, fighters, partners. Their bond wasn't weakness, it was strength. Civilian protests started in 5 systems. Old commanders resigned. Young soldiers began to question orders. The galaxy started to shift, one memory at a time. But peace never comes easy. Just as Jackson and Zira looked out the window at the peaceful stars, the radar beeped. Unknown object approaching fast. Stealth drive detected. Zira jumped to the screen. Ship size. Super destroyer. Jackson narrowed his eyes. Red Eclipse isn't done yet. A message came through. This time, it wasn't a voice. It was a face, half covered in metal. Old, angry, familiar. Varen. Zira gasped. He survived. His voice echoed cold and bitter. I built you, Zira. You were mine. You were never supposed to feel. You were never supposed to love. Now you will both burn for your sins. The message ended. The enemy ship began to charge its primary weapon. Zira turned to Jackson. We can't outrun that. Jackson fought for a second. Then he looked at the memory core. We don't need to run. He pulled a second chip from the core, one his father had hidden. It was a virus. A data bomb. It would fry any ship system that tried to overwrite Zira's programming. Can you get this into their system? He asked. Zira nodded. If you get me close. Jackson ran to the pilot's seat. Then let's crash the party. Love is the final weapon. The Wanderer 9 flew silently toward its final stand. In the distance, the Red Eclipse super destroyer waited like a sleeping beast, dark, enormous, and deadly. Its guns were glowing. The energy core pulsed like a thunderstorm ready to break. Inside the ship, Jackson adjusted his gloves, his face calm but focused. Zira stood beside him. Her mechanical arm opened, connecting wires to the virus chip. This chip will fry their control systems if I can upload it, she said. But I'll need to board the ship to do that. Jackson looked at her sharply. Boarding that ship is suicide. She looked back at him, eyes glowing soft blue. It's the only way. Jackson clenched his jaw. No, we do it together. Zira stepped closer. If I go alone, I might get in unnoticed. You're human. They'll detect you instantly. Jackson shook his head. We've come this far together. I'm not letting you walk into danger alone again. Zira touched his chest gently. You already did, once. You let me go, for peace. He lowered his voice, and I regretted it every day I didn't remember you. There was a long pause. Then Jackson took her hand. "Let's go together." The final flight. The Wanderer 9 zipped through the dark like a ghost. Alarms blared from the super destroyer as they approached. Enemy drones flew out like insects. Jackson weaved the ship through laser fire, dodging death at every turn. Zira stood at the weapons console, firing with precision. Every blast she made felt like music, controlled, smooth, and exact. "Target the lower hangar bay," she yelled. "It's their weakest point." Jackson dove down. The ship shook as enemy fire hit the side, but they were fast. Too fast. Boom. They crashed through the hangar door and landed roughly on the steel floor. Inside the massive red eclipse ship, red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. Robotic voices called for backup. Jackson and Zira ran out, blasters in hand. The ship was cold, colorless, full of metal walls and sharp angles. It felt like a machine. No life. No warmth. As they ran, Jackson whispered, "This place is like a cage." Zira nodded. "It was my home once, a prison I didn't know I was trapped in." The core room. They reached the central control hub, deep inside the ship, surrounded by thick security. Dozens of guards stood in their way. Red Eclipse soldiers, all half robot, half human. Some once rebels, now controlled. Lost. Zira looked at Jackson. "Cover me. I'll plant the virus." Jackson nodded, raised his blasters, and stepped forward. Zira jumped, spun, and sprinted through the chaos like lightning. Jackson fired left and right, creating paths for her. Soldiers fell one by one. Sparks flew. Zira leaped onto a high platform and stabbed her blade into the main console. The virus chip lit up green. Uploading. 10%. 30%. Suddenly, the air grew heavy. A low growl echoed. A tall black figure stepped out of the smoke. Varen. Burned. Twisted. More machine than ever. His right eye glowed blood red. His body hissed steam. "You still think love is power?" He laughed. "Love is weakness." Jackson stepped forward, pointing both blasters at him. "You're wrong. Love made me strong enough to forget everything, and still come back." Varen growled. "Then die for it." He rushed forward with metal arms swinging. Zira screamed. "Jackson." Jackson dodged, rolled, and fired, his blasts sparking off Varen's armor. Zira continued uploading. 70%. 85%. Varen knocked Jackson down hard. "You lost once. You'll lose again." But before Varen could strike again, Zira jumped from the platform, grabbed him midair, and slammed her energy blade into his chest. "You forgot something," she whispered. "I'm not just a cyborg anymore." Varen's body exploded in light. Gone. The system collapsed. Zira rushed back to the console. 99%. Almost there. Suddenly, a security system kicked in. Automatic lock. She needed one more code. Jackson rushed beside her. She looked at him. "There's no time. The system needs 2 emotional biometrics to finish the virus. A connected bond." Jackson stared. "Like a real connection." She nodded. "Yes, like love." Without a word, Jackson took her hands. Their fingers touched. The system glowed. Match. Confirmed. Emotional link. Active. Upload. Complete. Suddenly, the entire Red Eclipse ship powered down. All across its halls. Doors froze, weapons dropped, lights died. The virus worked. Zira stepped back, exhausted. Jackson caught her before she fell. "We did it." A message across the stars. Back on their ship, they recorded one last message. Jackson sat in front of the camera. "This is Jackson Kane. I remembered who I am, and who I love." Zira stood beside him. "We were told love across species was wrong. We were told to forget it, but we proved them wrong. Love is not a weakness, Jackson continued. It is the final weapon. They uploaded the final video to the galactic net. Millions watched. Tears, cheers, protests. All across the stars, people began to believe again. Love wasn't just for one kind. It was for all. A new beginning. Weeks later, the galaxy changed. Red eclipse fell. Old walls between humans and other species began to break. New leaders rose, those who believed in peace, not power. Zira and Jackson lived quietly on a small green planet, away from the noise. One day, under two suns, Jackson walked into their garden and found Zira looking up at the sky. He wrapped his arms around her. "You still remember the twin moons?" She nodded. "Always." He kissed her forehead. "No matter what we were, no matter what we'll be, you'll always be my wife." Zira smiled. "And you, my reason to feel." A new star rises. The camera pans up to space. A new ship launches from the surface. Painted on its side, Unity 01, built by love. As it flies into the stars, a voice echoes. In the end, it wasn't weapons or war that saved the galaxy. It was two hearts that refused to forget each other. The end